Hello. Okay. We're just going to wait for people to come in. Wow, 12 people already. That's amazing. $6.50. Wow. Hi. Yeah, Shrikesh, Rahul Ram, Akash, Murugesan, Tamilarasan, Daya Murugesh, Prabhakaran, Balamurugan, Prabhu Kumar, Hemant Kumar. All wonderful to see you guys here. Today is not the test. Today is the actual live session. This is not a test. So I think we have about 50 people, so that's good enough to start. So before we continue, can you guys let me know if it's okay we do it in English, or do you want to do it in Tamil? I'm okay with either of those. But if the audience is not going to be able to understand me, then I'll have to switch. So you guys are welcome to put it up in the chat if you want to do it in English or in Tamil. I'll let you guys choose. So I see one vote for English already. Both are fine. Mix. You're not here because you're jobless. We are here because your work is amazing. Thanks, man. Don't know if it's a compliment or declaration, but either way, thanks. French le பேசுங்க. Yeah, okay, sure. Why not? English. It's either English or it's either English or both. So I'm gonna go with English. If at all I need to switch to Tamil for a bit, I'll do that. So no problem. Great voice, bro. Thanks. So yeah. Okay, we still have a little more people coming in. I was frankly expecting only 20 people to show up. So it's showing up that we have 72, which by itself is amazing. 80% English, 20% Tamil. This is not Alex's stand-up comedy, where I do 80% English in the first half and then 20, 40, 30% English in the second half. Okay, so I'm going to wait for just one more minute, let more people come in due to network issues and whatnot. Once we are there, then we can start the session. So, yeah, I mean, thank you all for coming on a Sunday evening. I mean, not that we get to go out or do anything fun on a Sunday evening, but yeah, it's Jagan Krishna. Script for Inai movie. Varum. English, please. Yeah, okay. I'll mostly stick to English. Don't worry about it. What are the background posters? Okay, we can do that while more people come in. So, the camera is flipped. But these are posters I made myself. I just moved into this new apartment, got myself a nice room, and I thought I would decorate the wall since I'm teaching online classes. If for people who don't know, I'm a professor at VIT. So I have to do online classes. I teach bioengineering, not cinema. Um, yeah. These are posters I made. I designed them, and these are like some of my favorite episodes or videos I made for moving images. So the first one is Talabadi, writing a scene for Talabadi. That's episode one. That's where the whole channel started. Next one is my all-time favorite, the three videos I made for Aayithu Eluthu. So I just took one iconic scene that I felt conveys the movie. So that's or according to me, that's the point where Michael gets shot and his bike just skewers on the Napier Bridge. Then we have the Kamal Trilogy that I made, three of my favorite Kamal videos. You have Heram, Alavandan, and of course, Virumadi as Summa. So I just mix and mash those. The man has amazingly symmetrical face, so it's easy to mash up different parts of him like a broken glass, and it still looks like him. And of course, final one is Ine, my my one true proud accomplishment so far. Took me more than 6 months to do it, script wise and then animation wise. And there are a lot of people who helped me along with it. They are being credited, so I want to see their name up on my room every day. So for people asking the posters, I posted a low-res version of it with watermarks. That's because I don't want people to steal it. You will be amazed at how easily people steal content from others. So yeah, for copyright's sake, because for all the work that I put in into making these posters, even though it's just for my wall, I will be sharing a high resolution version for it. But my friends are suggesting that I do like a membership thing with a whole channel and offer these as perks for people who are supporting the channel as a way of thank you, rather than just putting it out there for anyone and everyone to enjoy. Um, so yeah, I've already put out Dayam, the book that Kamal wrote, which Alavandan was based on, out there for everyone to enjoy. And I intended to make no money out of it because I just wanted it to reach more people. It's hard to uh, find that novel. I was amazingly lucky to find one copy of it, which I have somewhere. But this is my own hard work. So I'll put it out there for people supporting the channel. We'll figure it out. This whole thing is an experiment. Today's session is an experiment. This is a taster session where I want to talk about what a script doctor is. And today we'll be tackling two important aspects of a script doctor. There are more aspects to it as a whole overall thing, but just two little aspects. I'm sorry, I don't have anyone moderating this, so I cannot look at all the chat and then talk as well. So you'll have to excuse me while I get accustomed to looking at the chat and also responding here while talking. Sorry. This is how the channel is. There's no one to help me with anything. Usually it's me doing everything by myself. So bear with me. Anyway, in the future, we'll have like actual sessions like in Zoom where we can have more people come in and have like video interaction with them and do like a workshop for Script Doctor. Today's session is just going to be an introduction about Script Doctor. Okay. Do you use Blender or iClone? For Ine, yeah, I use both actually. iClone made things much better. iClone is really good at animating characters than Blender is. Blender gives you too many options. iClone keeps it more simple. You have template movements that you can just tweak to your thing. So for conversation, all I have to do is there are like a couple of templates. I just have to drag one, and then I can tweak their body language and timing based on the dialogue. And there is auto syncing of lip for dialogues. So that makes the workflow more easier. Blender gives you too many options. You have to go for every bone and keyframe it. So yeah. Okay, I guess that's enough questions about Inai. We'll tackle it once the interaction session starts. Let's actually get into the topic of today, script doctor. So, script doctor, what is a script doctor? Um, so, script doctor, for those who don't know, it's not a term that I came up with, it's already existing out there. It's also someone who can be called as a script consultant. So what they do is, you have your script, you have already laid out your idea, you have all the acts written out, you have your script. Now this is where a script doctor comes in and reads through it and like tries to plot it in a single page, tries to map it out in a single page, and then tries to work with you, asks you the right question, sees exactly where some of the points are not very clear or where you have a problem. Usually, writers dread Act Two. Act Two forms the bulk so of a script, and usually you have most writers will have Act Two problems. Everyone can come up with a great setup, Act One. Act Three is basically resolving the setup, so those two are mirror images. But Act Three, Act Two is where the bulk of the action actually happens, and that is where most people have trouble. What you fill out, you have these cool scenes in your mind, but when you write it down, you realize that it only comes to about 10 or 20 minutes of the screen time. What are you going to do for the remaining time? So that's where a script doctor comes in, asks you the right questions, sometimes steers you in a different path, as in giving more clarity. So we'll take a few examples. You guys have been amazing enough to send me some of your ideas. I got way too many responses. I was only expecting like maybe 4 or 5, frankly. I got way too many responses and I had to close the form. I read through all of them and picked out like 3 basic ideas. I'm sorry for not getting to all of them, but if I did, we'll be just sitting here all day. So I got to 3 of those, and then we'll have a live session as well where you guys can do it. So, so before we start, these are the things we need to remember when it comes to a script. Okay, you guys are familiar with 3 acts, right? Act One, Act Two, Act Three. This is how most scripts are written. I would like to think of it as Act One. And there are a couple of other writers who prefer that way as well. There is Act One. There is Act Two, which is split into 2 parts. So that works for our Indian cinema as well. You can have Act Two, Part One before interval, and then interval point, and then Act Two, Part Two, and then finally Act Three, which amounts to the climax. Okay, so that way we have like 3 acts but 4 parts, and so that's the structure. Now the next thing to remember uh, is the one line or the log line, as they call it, of your story. So the reason I made the form is to see how much you guys are able to express your ideas in a single line. Um, so good movies will have a perfect log line. Okay, so so a good example would be, I'm thinking of a good movie um, which had like a good log line that you get what you understand exactly what you're getting into just by reading that one line. um, okay, let's take Kaidi. The only good movie I can think of in the recent past. um, yeah, from Save the Cat, yes. And Sitfield talks about these act structures too, but logline Save the Cat by Blake Snyder is the one who talks about the logline. So I even have the book with me here. Or actually, instead of Kaidi, let's do Inai, because I can talk about my own work. So for me, it started with I had the basic plot in my mind, but the way I distill down on which parts are important, where am I having problems, is by trying to write the log line, the one line. So the one line for Inai would be a disabled uh, a disabled journalist must save a convict from a police he adores. That's it. So you get three things out of this. One is, who is your main character? Who is the protagonist? The disabled journalist. Um, what does he want? He wants to save a convict from being encountered, right? And what is stopping him? This police that he actually adored, but now he has to save someone by going against him. So yeah, some Deenan is writing the logline for Godfather, so people can refer the chat as well. But yeah, yes, conflicting ambition. That can be your antagonist. It can be a person, it can be a situation, but the logline basically has these three things, out of which this goes against everything, like all the struggle that this character faces. That's my act two. So what you saw in Ine was just basically act one. We are just getting into the story. We have set up all these characters. We are just getting into the story, and this is where we establish the motivation. And once we get into the story, act two starts. So that is what I wanted to do with at least the short film, was to get out the first act of the film out. But yeah, that's the log line. So that's how you work towards it. Now, so I'm going to take three examples and then talk about how I can help. Okay. Again, this is entirely my opinion, and this is based on my experience by reading all these books and going through all these cinema and trying to do it by myself. So yeah, so the first blog line or brief that I got was from Kirtivasan. His thing is, it's basically a domestic abuse survivor. He becomes a writer director and he does gory films, but now through some event he finds himself as part of his cinema. He goes into the cinema world, and there something changes his mind, and he has to now convince his characters that is a reflection of his thoughts before, to change their violent and gory ways. So when you try to condense it into a log line, into a single line, it's like yeah, like how he said, a domestic abuse survivor writer finds himself part of in his own story and must convince his characters to give up their violent ways. So the antagonism here is that the situation he is in, he has to come out of it and do that. So it clearly puts who the protagonist is. Then it clearly talks about what the situation he'll be in, and finally the antagonism is, or the goal here is he has to convince his characters. So now once I come in, this is where a script doctor comes in. So now we will try to break this into acts. How does this work as act 1, act 2, act 3? So in a normal sense, unless you want to go crazy and do non-linear whatever, man, in a normal sense, this is how it goes. The part till we establish who he is and where he gets into his cinema would be the first 20 minutes. Something happens, he finds himself in his own cinema, like Maya, for that example. He's inside his own story. He's inside his own story. Now this is where the whole bulk comes in. You have to cover the major part, act 2, part 1, till interval point, and then from there till the end. The third act is easy. The third act is when he actually goes about, he decides that he wants to do this. He's going to change the mind of each of his characters. And when he does, he finally gets out and he's a changed man. So you got the whole hero's journey laid out pretty well, Kirtivasan. So you have your character start with an initial state of mind or something. Then he goes through this whole journey, and then now he's in a whole different state of mind, a new normal. So that is perfect. You have the journey thing laid out. But what I'm worried about is the entire act 2. what happens for the entire act 2? If you're going to have him realize that his ways of gory violence or whatever his thought process is wrong and he has to change it, this is covering up the entire act 2. So where do we keep the interval point? What are the incidents? Who are the you need to have other people who join him or the various characters that he meets, but you cannot just keep introducing them. That is one thing. A recent Not a recent film, but a film that had a lot of potential but had a lot of act 2 problem is Puli by Vijay. The film had a great setup. It had a great almost good act 3 as well, except for the low budget fight. Everything else was good. But the act 2 was kind of where the film sagged, because it went on like this. So you're in trouble when your story just keeps happening to the protagonist. The way to explain this is, if you're narrating the story to me and you say that, okay, this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then this happens, the minute that you use the word and then, you're done. This is something all screenwriters talk about. Even Tony from Every Frame a Painting, he has talked about this. It shouldn't be and then and then and then. That's just boring. This is what happened in Puli. I'm not saying that your story is like that. It's just that I don't have the entire story idea. So I'm just saying that this is stuff that you need to look out for, and this is for everyone. Oh, Ranak is here. Hi. Ranak from Fully Filmy is here. You have a celebrity. Okay. Someone mentioned about groundhog. I'll get to that. See, okay. So you don't want and then and then and then. You want something happens that leads to something else happening, and that leads to something else. So it's all connected. One thing triggers the other, and so on and so forth. So that is where the problem is. So Puli, what happened in Act 2 is that he goes to one place, he meets these people, then he goes to the next place, he meets the next people, and then he gets the next clue, and then he next and then. So it just keeps on going like that. So you want to avoid that. So that is something I find in your story. So going back to Groundhog style narrative, in Groundhog again, Act 1 is where Act 1 ends where you find him, where the hero discovers that he's stuck in the same day, right? Initially you have this arrogant guy who doesn't respect other people or the community he's living in. At the end of it, he comes out as a changed man who wants to give to the community. He is more receptive and all that. So that is his hero's journey. The entire Act 2 is him figuring out this stuck in this repetitive day, right? It keeps happening. And then Act 3 is when he decides to do things differently, and that gets him out. So yeah, he's right. Keith Evanson's story is kind of like Groundhog's Day in that aspect. But here's where Groundhog's Day's Act 2 is interesting. It's never, although we see the same day repeating, it's never the first day happens and then the second day happens and then the third day. No, it's not like that. Every time you see the day repeating, he's trying something else. First, he's trying to make sense of it. Second, and that leads to him getting frustrated and trying to kill himself over and over. And when that fails, he decides to live through this and learn new skills. See the chain of events? So that is how you want your Act 2 to be, basically. So yeah, Keith Evason, that's a nice story. So I'm going to go for a little bit of... I'm going to read some of the chat and then we'll get to the second story. Okay, can you decode difference between... come on, man. This is not about moving images. This is about Script Doctor. So let's stick to those things. Screenplay 3-act structure must... not necessarily, but these are... see, it's an art form. You can do it however you want. But these are like things that have worked, and the audience are also tuned to look at it this way. So you have to learn these rules to break them. I know it's a cliche statement, but these things help. And it's excuse me. So it's easy to be avant-garde and just say that, oh, I'm not going to follow any structure at all. But when you try to put your pen to paper and start writing, you will quickly realize that um, without any structure, everything is just falling apart unless you are like absolutely talented at it. Not that I'm saying that you're not. I'm just saying that you need to work in the system to know how you can break the system. So yeah, that is what I would suggest. Ranak, yes. Social network doesn't do and then it switches back and forth. So you kind of see what happened in the past that is motivating him in the present. So it's not like, oh, Steve Jobs was with his friends. Not Steve Jobs. What am I thinking? Zuckerberg was with his friends. And then he found other people, and then he had the idea, and then he created this company, and then this. No, they didn't do that. They switched back and forth. That's where the nonlinear narrative came into play, where you see that something happened in the past that led to him making this decision in the present, and something else happens because of that, and that is how that changed his path. So there is a narrative here. What's 3-act structure? I guess you missed the first 15 minutes. um, okay, so next we'll move on to the next story that I found really good. This is from Raja S. This is like what people call high concept. It's a gangster story that stars Sivakarthikeyan and VJS as two gangsters, but both of them have they are close friends, and they are gangsters who work under a boss, and but both of them have a secret. One of them is an undercover cop, and the other is secretly trying to overthrow the boss and become the new boss. Now, how things will play out when one of their secret gets revealed? That's the story. Excellent concept. Although it's a little bit wordy, it's like 3 lines. You still have the essence of the one line. You can distill it down perfectly into a single line. This is like Enne Erindal meets what was that movie called? Vikram Veda. Enne Erindal meets Vikram Veda. I really like it. It's high concept. People love seeing this kind of movie. There's a lot of play in it. So, but here's my so as a script doctor, here's my questions that I ask when I hear this script being presented to me. First thing is, who is the protagonist here? Is it the undercover cop, or is it the guy who is trying to take over his boss? Second is, you you can have both of them as protagonists, but there's supposed to be a point of view. If you're going to switch back and forth between them, then you have to establish that as well. But end of day, let's take another movie for example that pretty much did something similar. Captain America: Civil War. Although it's people call it like Avengers 2.5 because most of the Avengers were in it, still the protagonist was never Tony Stark. It was always from Captain America's point of view. So that is where you need to figure out who the protagonist is going to be, who is the more interesting character, and who the protagonist is going to be. Vikram Veda, it was of course VJS. Enne Erndal, of course, we know it was Ajit's character. The undercover cop was the protagonist in that. Anyway, so first question would be that. Next is, how do you split into the 3 acts? So act 1, you can establish them as friends and everything. I would suggest that you start off with the end of act 1 with revealing to the audience that both of these characters have a secret. This is like the first 20 minutes. You set everything up. Now, act 2 would deal with act 2, at least act 2 part 1 can deal with both of them uncovering each other's truth, but not letting each other know, trying to let things play out. And then act you can have your interval point where both realize that the other person knows, and then act 2 part 2 can be them trying to outsmart, actually, like facing off each other. And then act 3 is whether they decide to team up to take down this big Don, or you can surprise the audience by actually taking out the Don altogether at the end of Act 2. And then Act 3 is, or even during the interval, if you want to, you can surprise the audience that way. And then Act 3 is now VJS becomes the actual boss, and the undercover cop has to take down his old friend, if you want to go down any Arundel's road. Or you can do something different and have them team up only for one to betray the other in the end. So there are a couple of ways to go about this. But now, and for you, I feel like compared to the previous story, your Act 2 has a lot of potential. You can do a lot of mind games here. Whenever you want to reveal the truth, people are going to expect that this is how the story is going to go. You can prepone a lot of things before, and then get everything out of the way, and then you can do this. A movie that did it well, but in a wrong franchise, was actually Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Ryan Johnson, I totally get what he was trying to do by having Snoke, the villain that has been built up in the first movie, just be taken out that easily. Now it's just between the two characters, right? You have Rey, and then you have Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. Now they are the ones who are against each other. So he tried to do it, but it's a wrong franchise. But he tried again with Knives Out, and he succeeded. So Knives Out, initially, for people who have not seen it, spoiler alert, it turns out like a whodunit, right? This rich, eccentric guy just dies, and then a detective comes into the scene, and then you expect that at the end of it, we realize that who actually killed him and whatnot. But at the end of Act 2, Part 1, the director just shows how the guy actually died, and then the rest of the story becomes something else, about how the person responsible, or the person we think is responsible, tries to get away with it. So that is how you can surprise your audience when you lay out your act structure. These are like high concept films, but these are also kind of like template films. So you can play around with the template. That's where I'm getting at. It's not bad to have a template film, but you can go against audience's expectation and prepone a lot of things. You would think that, oh, this is how it's going to be. They're going to realize about each other in the interval, and then there's going to be a huge fight or whatever. You can always keep going against expectation in a template film. That's the best thing about template films. So yeah, good job, Raja. I really liked this story. I'm excited to see how you develop it. So sorry, I'm getting thirsty. அபிமான், ரொம்ப நேரமா ஆஃப் டாபிக்காவே கண்ட மேனிக்கு இந்த ஃபிலிம் ஸ்டூடெண்ட் சும்மா காட்டி கேள்வி கேட்குற மாதிரியே கேட்டுக்கிட்டு இருக்கீங்க. People who might know him, he is another video essay channel, Abhiman Tube. He does really good video essays, but now he's just trying to show off art versus commercial. Every movie is commercial movie, man. The minute they make you buy a ticket, it's a commercial movie. That's the commercial part. So everything is a commercial movie. Okay. So we are at the halfway point here. I still have one more story structure that someone gave me, and which needs a little bit more polish. We can talk about that, or do you guys want to suggest something in the comment section, and we can talk about that story? Whatever you guys want to do. Before that, are you guys finding this useful? I don't know. This is the first time I'm doing this. The reason I started moving images was there wasn't many people who would let me talk about movies to them, bore them to death. So I just thought I'll put it out there, and maybe there will be more people like me who would be interested in it. And surprisingly, here you guys are. So yeah. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you want me to get to the third plot point, or do you want me to talk about any of your story? Let's keep it a little bit interactive. It's just me talking all the time. Okay. I'm gonna read through some of the comments. VJ's SK story you told looks like Megaman. I have not watched that movie. Sorry. Um, Godfather is a non-linear film too. The plot points happen within the structure. The acts happen as such. With non-linear story, it's still it's how the information is being presented, but they can still have proper three acts to them. Um, so everyone likes Christopher Nolan for his non-linear structure, right? But if you think about it, all of their, in spite of his non-linear structure, they clearly have three acts to it. Prestige has three acts. He actually names them the three acts of a magic art. He does the same. The reveal, the whatever, and the prestige. So yeah, if you look closely, there is a perfect structure to it. Three act structure. Then you have Inception. Inception is a perfect hero's journey. Act one ends with we see who Cobb is, what is he capable of. Act one ends with him accepting Sato's job. Act two is entirely about him planning how to get into the heist, getting the team together, and then going into the heist. And then Act three is how he resolves his own issues and whatnot and gets out of it. So yeah, perfect three act structure. Uh, so yeah, is my chat held up, or are you guys not typing anything? Can someone just send something in the chat so that I know the chat is working and I'm still connected? Okay, I'm not getting anything in the chat. Seems that it's held up. Am I live? It's showing that I'm live. Hopefully, I'm live. Hmm. Can any of you just send me something on the chat? Just a hi, so that I know the chat is working. I'm not able to see anything. Let me just quickly check my internet. Okay. Okay. Beenan, you're live and the chats are working. Awesome. I'm not getting anything on the chat, but good to know that I am live. So thanks for letting me know. Okay. Chat is working. Okay. I'm not getting the chat messages here, but I'm getting it on the other one. So yeah. Let me just quickly check my internet. Okay, sorry about that. Terribly sorry about the whole chat freezing up on me. Okay, I still have the live session going on here. Okay, so someone asked, Tyagaraja Kumar Raja says his writing does not contain three acts and only the third act. What do you make of that? Actually, no. If you think about, let's take Super Deluxe because it's more fresh in people's memory. You clearly had three acts in it. First act is where he establishes each characters in succession. You had Wembu's character, and then you had the boys. So Wembu's character is that her illicit lover, whatever, he's dead now. That's where her setup is. The boys, the TV is broken. Setup done. Mishkin's thing, he learns that his son got stabbed. And Vijay's story is when he arrives. So that's clearly Act One. That's where you set up what the family is or who these guys are, and then what's the inciting incident. And then Act Two is what happens after this happens. Um, but it's just think of it like four parallel stories with all of them having their own acts, but they're all presented in the same structured way. We only move to Act Two when we see all the Act One done for all the characters, and then Act Two, and then Act Three. So yeah, it's totally structured. I'm sorry, I have to switch to my phone to see the comments. Roshamon's screenplay. Well, Rashomon is again a three-act structure. The first one ends with this person getting murdered, and you have these four characters with conflicting stories. Act two is them trying to going back and forth, hearing each other's story and how this thing is. And Act three is what led to the actual murder, and so on and so forth. So yeah, okay. I'm going to move on to the third one because this is hard. And again, I'm very sorry that my chat just froze up on me. Uh, Thought YouTube Live would be more stable, but yeah. Okay, so this is from Hari Darshan. His story is, he says it's based on a true event where three girls in a locality goes missing and then police try to solve the case. After 10 years, they find one girl with a baby. Turns out that they were held captive by this psychopath, and the story is going to deal about the turmoil that the family and the police officer who dedicate 10 years of their lifetime for a single case. So yeah, so yeah, my first question is, who is the protagonist here? I know I'm going back to the same ideas, but yeah, first thing is, are there going to be one protagonist? You can have multiple protagonists, but you have to switch between them. And something like Super Deluxe as well. You can have multiple things. And the interesting way you can do it is by you can just show that these are like unconnected events. And at the end of your Act One, or even if you do it really well, at the end of Act Two, Part One, at your intro point is where you can reveal that all of this is connected and all of this is just one case. So you can have a psychopath's own story, then this family that have lost his daughter, whatever, and then in the present, 10 years later, so you can have a flashback. Then in the 10 years later, you have this police officer who found this girl with a baby. So you can have like three parallel stories, and then at some point you can reveal that all of them are the same case, and then you can take it forward. So you have to determine who your protagonists are, and that is going to help you formulate this story, because the story by itself, you have all these events and everything since it's based on a true event. But now where you can play with is the structure. So yeah, so those are three great stories. I wanted to have the last 15, 20 minutes to just open it up to you guys, and you can just pitch me an idea right now with like a one line, the log line based on what we talked about, and I could help make it better. So at least that was my intention before the whole chat froze up. Okay, so Bijoy asks, usually a conventional three-act structure is supposed to have a conclusion slash resolution, and Bahubali 1 doesn't end that way, yet it works. Well, Bahubali 1, or even I wanted to talk about two films, but I'll get to that. So Bahubali by itself, it works that way. It just sets things up for the sequel. But as a self-contained story, it still works in its own three-act structure, where you have his son looking out. His son's journey. He's the one who is going through all this, and then he learns how his father dies. The resolution here is that he learns that his father was killed, or he learns who his father was. Basically, let's not even get into how he gets killed, because that comes in the second part. Why did Kattappa kill Bahubali? So I think the resolution there is that he learns that he comes from a bigger legacy, and so he's now a changed man. He starts off as this carefree youth who just goes around in the river and whatnot, lives his own life. Then at the end, he learns his legacy. So he learns who his father was. So that's the hero's journey. But these sequel films, or like two-part films, are like kind of hard that way. Um, but yeah, there are two movies that I actually wanted to talk about. One of them is Remo. So if you take any screenwriting book, there's at least one mention of a film called Tootsie. Tootsie is a Dustin Hoffman film, which is basically where Remo borrows its ideas from. It's about this arrogant, out of work actor. He really does not respect women. He just uses the same pickup line to every woman in a party. And then he learns that there is a role, and he has to get this role. He's out of work. A role as an actor, but the role is a female role. So he gets the help of his makeup friend, puts on a female getup, and then chaos ensues. So that's how Tootsie works. Now, Remo pretty much does the same. You have a protagonist with a particular want. It's that the hero cannot act in romantic scenes. So he gets this suggestion from this director to, go love in real life, and maybe that will give him inspiration to act, which by itself is kind of, this is where the problem is. The motivation by itself is kind of weak, because you establish that he's a good actor, and actor need not draw everything from their own experience. If that is the case, then if an actor is playing a psychopath, does he have to kill more people? So yeah, it goes back to crazy Mohan dialogue. Anyway, from Vasul Raja. டாக்டர் ஆகணும்னா முதல்ல பேஷண்டா இருக்கணுமா அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி. ஸோ that idea by itself is kind of weak. But here's the thing. Halfway through the journey, it just turns into something else. He falls in love with this girl. He puts on a lady getup. Now, here's the thing. He also has no experience playing a lady. How is he able to pull that off? Anyway, so then he does it, and then the story goes somewhere else. It's about her finding out, or him trying to break her marriage. We totally forget about his initial aim, which is to fall in love, and or at least try to fall in love, and learn from that experience, put that into his performance. We never even come across his aspirations as an actor after that. And then suddenly in the end, sorry, Suddenly in the end, yeah, he's just shooting the same story now. So that I feel, among other problems in that movie, I feel that was the problem. Tootsie, whereas it keeps the thing focused, or Avai Shanmughi for that matter, which is a remake of Mrs. Doubtfire, but you always have the focus. You have this estranged father, or not estranged, a divorcee who wants to get back to his kid. He wants to live with it, and therefore he takes this uh, role. So you can see how the story structure is also. Pandian, Kamal's character, wants to be with his daughter, but his wife is not letting him. Okay? So he takes up the role of a lady, but that leads to other problems where more men fall in love with him. So he has to balance that out and not reveal his identity. So there is no and then here. There's no this happens and then this happens. There's always a connective. This, you expect this to have, he expects something to happen, but something else happens. Therefore, he has to change his tactic and so on and so forth. So that's how the story goes. But the focus is always there. Him trying to be with his daughter and in the process get his family back together. Whereas Remo's motivation initially is something else and then it goes something totally in a different way. The another example I wanted to talk about was Vishwarubam 2, talking about sequel films. Vishwarubam 2. See, Vishwarubam 2 had a lot of potential. Part 1, and I'm borrowing this from Bharadwaj Rangan's review as well, something that he noticed, I noticed as well, but he put it more beautifully. So the first part is about father, right? You have Viz in his flashback talk about how his father was a Pakistani and but he never knew his father, and that was like a thing of contention among the terrorist group or whatever. So it was about his father, the father side of his life. The second part was supposed to be about his mother, both in a literal sense and in a sense that he's coming back to his motherland, India. Both his motherland has and his mother has forgotten about him. His mother has poor memory. I think she has Alzheimer's or something like that, where she doesn't remember him. His mother has forgotten him. His motherland has forgotten about him because he went into cover as a double agent. His motherland has forgotten about him. So that's the thing that he wanted to deal with. But by the time we get to that, the first half is already over. The first half is entirely them pit stop. Who takes a pit stop in London or UK or whatever for that? The biggest pit stop is like for maybe 3 hours that you wait for your next flight. Uh, so for some reason he decided to keep the entire first half in London or UK, and then you had this whole underwater sea fight and whatnot. Um, that was a waste of time, and the story only happens in the second half, but by that time we've already lost interest. But that was a missed opportunity. I know there were budgetary constraints and whatnot, and it's a miracle that the film got released. So but looking at it in a vacuum, there was a lot of potential that that the film failed to live up to. So just going to take a look at the chat. Someone wanted to know Mahesh and Pratikaram's logline and 3 acts. I think it's pretty basic. I think if you think about it, you can do it. The act one stops. Act one ends when Mahesh gets hit by this guy. Forgot his name. Anyway, that's where he gets slapped, and Act two is him refusing to wear his slipper, trying to change who he is. So you can see the hero's journey perfectly. He starts off as this kind of a pushover but kind character, but at the end of it, he becomes a confident man and gets to win the girl and whatnot. He's a changed man through his journey. Baby, that's his name. Who? No, it's not Baby. Uh, anyway, who cares? Um, okay. So, Ajay asks, sorry if I'm coming back to and then. Do you think if you remove the and thens from Varnamayram, will that make Varnamayram a better movie or will it spoil the movie? I'm not gonna comment whether it's a better movie or not. But Varnamayaran didn't have a lot of and then. Um, or at least the parts I remember, I don't remember as and then. If you take just Surya's the son's story, he falls in love, but the girl isn't here. So he travels to US, but she dies. That makes him a drug user. Then he falls in love again or something. I don't remember. It's been so long. But I'm pretty sure there were a lot of and thens as well. And that's because Gautam Menon usually just has his first act or something written and then he just goes to the shoot. So I'm not going to comment on that. Um, yeah, Nagabala says Avesh Shanmugi doesn't entirely focus on the family. Whereas Mrs. Doubtfire did. Well, that is where Avesh Shanmugi deviates from Mrs. Doubtfire. It's a mix of Mrs. Doubtfire and Tootsie, where the hilarious hijinks comes from people falling in love to this man dressed up as a woman. That's entirely from Tootsie. In Mrs. Doubtfire, the thing goes. Mrs. Doubtfire actually has more in common with Remo, in that Robin Williams' character tries to break up the marriage of his ex-wife with Pierce Brosnan. So that is where their focus shifts. It's not entirely family based in Mrs. Doubtfire as well. Um, so yeah, but those are things that happen in act 2 that forms the entire running time. What are the various challenges faced by this protagonist? That is act 2, the challenges. So you can have it in different forms. You can have it either him trying to make sure that his wife doesn't get remarried, or you can have him trying to stave off all the various men who fall for him while still maintaining his double life. So yeah, um, hated Darbar, but the logline for that film was decent. What went wrong with that film screenplay? Thank you for reminding that. I actually wanted to talk about Darbar. So Darbar, and this is where we'll after Darbar we'll just end this as well. Sorry for not being so interactive as much as I promised because of this whole chat situation. But I promise in the second session we'll have this either in Zoom or something. I'll let you guys know. That will be a bigger session, hopefully, and we'll have like a live workshop. And yeah, but I wanted to limit this as just a 1 hour session. Anyway, we'll end with talking about Darbar. um, so Darbar, on paper, it has an excellent logline. You even have a villain who is as powerful, or at least project as being as powerful as the hero, which is fun to watch. But they only face off in the end. Okay, but here is where Darbar failed. It failed because it's a logline and story we have seen so many times. That's where it failed. There was nothing new in it. Um, Honest cop gets involved in a case that leads to him losing his family members. Gautam Menon has already made 3 films with the same idea. So it's where yeah, that's the one. And also the way he solves the case. Murugadas is known for his screenplay, how he keeps it exciting. Like in Tupaki, the way he solves the case is very exciting. When he figures out who he is, and the interval point, high point where he had that encounter scene, those are well written scene. It keeps you engaged. You want to know how this hero is going to do this. Compared to that, Darbar didn't have that many scenes where you see the hero's brilliance. Half of the time he just strong arms people. He has he's a good cop, so he has all the support of his constables and whatnot. So, and they are able to, even force a higher official into signing orders and whatnot. No, and yeah, and the part about how his daughter dies and everything, that's just kind of, yeah, it didn't resonate well. so so yeah, that's where Darbar failed for being too safe. It never took any risks. It never did anything different. So yeah, that's my opinion on Darbar, at least. So yeah, with that, we'll end this live session. Um, and yeah, we'll end this live session. Thank you guys for being here. It constantly stayed above 100. You guys were here throughout this 1 hour in spite of my technical glitches. I cannot thank you enough for that. And hopefully, this is the start of something new. We can do more about this as we go along. We can have a session entirely dedicated to how I made Inai, because I can only draw from my own experience, right? I cannot claim to be an expert on something that I'm not, or I'm not claiming to be an expert on anything. Just because I made one short film doesn't make me an expert on anything. But these are just stuff that I learned that hopefully I can discuss with you guys, and you guys can bring in some good perspectives. I got really good perspectives on how you guys write your one lines based on the Google form that you filled out. So yeah, that was amazing. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next session sometime really soon. See you then. Bye bye.